Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're going to get started here in just a minute. My name is Victor Lund. I'm with RE Technology, and I have joining me here for today's webinar, Bernice Ross, the real estate coach. We're going to be discussing tomorrow's successful realtor, and we're helping real estate brokers and recruiters understand how to find the best possible realtor for success in our industry today. So we're really looking forward to a really great program here that Bernice has available. At this point, we're gonna let you know that today's webinar will be recorded. So for whatever reason you need to run, we'll send you the full recording. You'll be able to share it with others, and we'll be able to supply you with additional information and content that Bernice has put together for all the attendees. So we're very excited. Okay, so we're going to begin our webinar today. As I mentioned, I'm Victor Lund. I'm from RE Technology. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the company. Today, RE Technology reaches 700,000 realtors through partnerships with the leading MLSs in real estate today. We have with us, as part of our education program for our members, we have the real estate coach, Bernice Ross. Bernice is a columnist, so you've probably read her stuff on in the news. She does a great job there. She's published nearly 1,000 articles. She's also written 5 excellent books that support the needs and information of both agents and brokers in real estate. She's been a trainer in our industry for many, many years, and she's been a featured speaker at, I think, about every top real estate conference that we have in our industry. She's also spent a lot of time obtaining practical experience managing training programs for a lot of the leading brands and most successful franchise groups in real estate today, including Prudential John Douglas, Coldwell Banker, Keller Williams, United Real Estate, and she's also somebody who supports the Texas Association of Realtors in their training programs as well. So just a little housekeeping that will help you during our webinar today. As I mentioned earlier, this will be recorded. We do have staff that are with us monitoring our chat today. We have a pretty significant audience. So if you have any questions, you're having difficulty with audio, you're not seeing the screen, please type your question into the chat area and somebody will support you with that. Additionally, we are going to take questions for Bernice as well as for me, if you like, at the end of today's webinar. So we're going to provide about 40 minutes of information sharing, and then we'll get into a Q&A session that will make sure that anything that crops up during the webinar we can answer for you directly. So place your question in the questions area to the right-hand side, and we'll get that answered. As I mentioned earlier, you'll all be emailed a copy of today's webinar. As, you'll be able to share with others in your business, and you'll also be provided with some additional content that Bernice is featuring. So the topic of today's webinar is tomorrow's successful realtor, and we're going to talk about 4 different key areas of how to attract the right kind of sales associate to your business today. We're going to look at some of the characteristics of successful realtors. We've profiled the people that are having a tremendous amount of success in our industry today, and we're going to share those profiles with you. We're going to look at sales professionals who are not in real estate and identify characteristics that they have which may produce the foundation for success in our industry. We're going to teach you how to spot a future top producer, and we're also going to talk to you a little bit about how to interview new agents to qualify them for success. So with that, I'm going to pass the controls over to Bernice, and she's going to share her screen, and we'll get started. Again, if you have any questions for Bernice today, please enter that into the question area. And if you need support with any element of today's webinar, just type that support question into the chat box, and we have people on staff that are going to help you get your questions answered. So in just a moment here, we'll pass it over to Bernice, and Bernice, you'll need to click the button that says Share My Screen, and you should be good to go.
Hi, Victor. Thank you. I assume that you're seeing my screen. Is that correct?
Yes, we are.
Fantastic. Anyway, I want to thank everybody today for taking time from your busy schedules to be on the webinar, and I especially want to thank Victor and Liz and the group at RE Technology Technology who have put this together. It's an honor to be working with you. Today's focus is really going to be on how to recruit and train the successful new realtors of tomorrow. So a lot of the things that I'm going to say apply to the experienced agents, but as you know, with the median age of the business being 56, part of the issue we're facing now is how are we going to get the next round of new agents that we need to serve the customers that are in Gen Y and Gen X, and of course the boomers who are retiring. So specifically, we're going to focus about how to recognize the profile of new recruits that have the greatest probability of achieving success. And again, this also applies to your experienced agents. We're going to look at the key predictors of new agent sales success, as well as 3 reasons that agents leave the business and some of the things that you can do about it. And finally, we're going to give you 10 interview questions to ask recruits to determine if real estate excuse me, is a good career fit for them in terms of the agents that you're interviewing. And by the way, this will apply to experienced agents because these same characteristics are associated with success of top performers. So our focus is going to be on helping you, not today's focus is new agents, but probably 70 or 80% of what we're going to cover applies to all agents because they are the predictors of success. So the first thing I'd like to share, I know many of you are probably familiar with the DISC. And this is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a behavioral assessment that's been around for many years. And the ones that we have used in the past are from Target Training International. And I have a background in psychology. I taught psychology at the college level for many years. And I'm kind of so-so on behavioral assessments because they're not usually that accurate. But the one from Target Training has very, very high ability to predict, or they call it validity in the scientific community, to predict success. It's been administered to over 2 million people in 120 different countries, and they really understand what is associated with sales success. So if you're looking for a successful real estate agent, the profile on the DISC is high scores on the D and I factors, low scores on the S and C factors. Now what this means is someone who scores high on the D factor is a driver, someone who gets it done. They're dominant. A good way to think about this, if you think of Donald Trump, you know, he says, oh, well, I fired the right person. It's no big deal. You know, it's like water off a duck's back. For him, it's all about getting it done, and if they don't do the job, they're out of there. The high D is someone who will go out, they'll door knock, they'll cold call, but one of the things that they do, they're likely to get you into trouble because for them it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. The second factor that's important in top production is the I factor, and this is the influencing factor. And the best way to describe this, these are the people. My husband scores, he's a very, very high I. I can put, you know, when we go to the market, he's talking to the person who's weighing their fruit next to him. If we go somewhere, he'll strike up a conversation with anybody who's adjacent to him. So he is someone who loves to meet people. These two characteristics in tandem are only found in about 5% of the total population, but they are extremely highly correlated with top producers. In fact, you'll probably find if you look at the top producers in your offices or in your organization, they are almost all of them will score high on these two factors on the DISC. Now, the third factor on the DISC, and what we're looking at here now, we looked at this previous slide was the slide for the person who's the top producer. Here's the slide of somebody who's probably not going to do very well as a real estate producer. And the reason is that, first of all, they're lacking, you know, this is the profile of the perfectionist. They're probably going to be really hard to work with to begin with, and they're more focused on getting it right than this person has no people skills. But the person, the SC, the S is about 60% of the population scores high on the S factor, and S is steadiness. And the best way to describe this, my brother is a screaming high S. He's never been married. He gets up the same time every day, makes the same lunch, goes to work the same time, he has the same meals, he mows the lawn on Saturday, goes to the grocery store on Friday. You know, it's just, he's got everything is systematized, and he was in a sales position. The way he succeeded with that is he actually discovered what his customers were asking, and then he created a system to answer their questions where he had it all written out. So people who score high on the S factor can do well in sales. In fact, if you have someone as a teacher, they'll have the high people with the high systems, and we know that that's a good profile for success. But they're going to, someone who scores high on the S is probably not going to be your top producer, but they're going to be in that profitable middle. So a lot of times they'll be in that 50 to 75th quartile. So they may do 7, 10, 15 transactions per year, but they do them consistently, and they're consistent earners. And again, that's because of their systems. The fourth factor on the disc is the C factor, which is compliance. And the best way to describe this, these are people who are detail people. Think accountant, engineer, someone who's a technology person. They do well with the details. Well, if you have someone, if I was looking for someone on my staff, I'd probably want maybe the I to be up in here, the D could be a little bit lower. But I'd be looking for these two people, and especially if you have someone that's checking contracts or doing transaction management, I'm looking for this profile. But if I'm wanting to hire a salesperson, I'm looking for that person that's either a DI or perhaps a teacher with the IS. Those are the profiles that generally succeed based upon the behaviors. But the thing I like about the Target Training International Assessment that they just changed recently is that they have a second component called the values. And the values explain why people are successful. So it gives you the motivation behind the behavior. And what their research shows is fascinating. Regardless of the person's behavioral profile, if they score high on the value that is called utilitarian, and that means someone who's highly bottom line oriented, they're very practical, like what's the saying about people from Missouri, show me. They want to know how something's going to work. They want to know how it's going to help them, and if it isn't going to help them, they're not interested. So, this may be the person at your office meeting, you're launching a new program, they'll say, well, how is this better than the last one? I want to know, because if it's not, why should we be doing it? Again, it's that very practical approach. If you find someone who has this kind of high practical approach, and I'm going to give you some questions a little bit later in the webinar that will help you with that. If you find someone who's high on this factor, then what you have someone that according to Target Training's numbers, has a 71 to 72% chance of being highly successful as a salesperson. And this cuts across not only real estate, but all sales professions. So there's a 71 to 72% chance that this person will be successful if they have this value of being a utilitarian. Now, the second thing I'd like to share, I've been interested in new agent training. I started training new agents back in 1989 and ran the training program, as Victor mentioned, for John Douglas Company, where we had 4,000 agents, and we were a heavy recruiting company. In any event, I've been involved with new agent training for a long time. Back in 2006, I did a study with the folks with at Point 2 in the real estate simulator, and they're now called a line mark. And then just last year, at the end of the year, I started working with the Texas Association, and they wanted to take a look at what was going on in terms of their new agents and how they could better serve the training needs of their agents and, of course, consumers. So we did two different studies. The first study was with brokers, and the other one was with people who had been licensed for less than 3 years. The purposes of the two studies were to obtain data to improve the home buying and selling experience for Texas homeowners. The second purpose was to identify the factors that contribute to new agent sales success. And the third purpose was to identify the primary factors that cause agents to leave the business, especially new agents. So in terms of the actual studies, what we found is that there were 13,000 brokers that were contacted. We had 277 responses. We did a lot better with the new agents. There were 5,000 new agents. We had 732 responses. Statistically, both of these numbers are significant, so we can make generalizations. But nevertheless, because they self-select, there can be an issue there. Now, I'm going to put this up. and this URL will be available again at the end of the webinar. But if you'd like to download the detailed study results, including the 10 questions I'll be talking about to ask when you interview agents, visit realestatecoach.com/broker.html. Again, that's realestatecoach.com/broker.html. Again, I'll flash this up at the end of the webinar again, just so that you've got it as a reference. Now, here are the key findings that were echoed in both studies. First of all, what we're calling the big lie is everywhere. And this is really being perpetuated in many cases by a lot of the licensing schools. I don't know that any of the companies are doing it so much, but it is really a problem in the licensing schools, especially here in Texas. And what the big lie is that when you pass the licensing exam, you're going to start making big money now. People have this misconception about real estate that all you have to do is pound a sign in somebody's front yard and somehow you're magically going to make all these commissions. And, of course, we all know that's not the case. Business is a hard business. So the question is, how can we combat the big lie? And, well, we need to tell the agents the truth, and let's take a look at some of those issues. So here's where the issues are. First of all, most people who come into real estate don't realize they're starting a business. And this really was, this is something that we had the 277 broker studies that we got back. And I interviewed 12 of the very top recruiting companies and people who are doing that here in Texas, who have large, very successful companies. They're big brands here, some small brands, but they're very successful recruiters across the board. And they all told me the same thing. The agents aren't aware that they're starting a business. They're not aware of the startup costs. They're not aware that they're going to have to pay for things like marketing and MLS fees renew every quarter or every 6 months, whatever the program is in your particular area. They're not aware that they have to pay for advertising, signs. So they just don't, they come into it with the idea that they're coming into a job and everything's going to be supplied for them. And we need to help them understand that they're starting a business. And when they get their license, all they've done is they've just got a storefront that now says, I'm open for business. We need to help, we need to help them understand that they have to go out and get their own customers. Also, they have unrealistic expectations. Most of the brokers we talk to, the agents come in, and they expect for you to give them leads. They are not prepared for the fact that they may have to go knock on doors. They may be aware that agents are out doing these activities, but they're not aware that they have to go do this. They're also unprepared for the long hours in generating their own leads, as I've just mentioned. The issues that they have is, again, they think, well, I can take floor time or opportunity time, and that'll generate leads for me. Or if I go put a sign in front of an open house, somehow that's going to help generate leads. Well, sometimes it does. But again, they're not, most of them are not looking at it as having to go out and do sales calls. And they just don't get it. It's a sales position, which is kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. You talk about selling houses, real estate sales. It is a sales position. Now, Elizabeth, could I get you to launch the poll? This is, which universal complaint causes most agents to leave the business? A, my broker doesn't have enough time for me. B, I had a negative experience with another agent in my office. C, I want a more favorable commission split. D, the company office doesn't do enough for me. That's the reason for my lack of success. E, I'm not making enough money. Elizabeth, could you launch that poll, please, for us? And I am not seeing that, unfortunately. I say we've got a lot of responses coming in. This is interesting.
Yeah, Bernice, this is excellent. I can't believe that it's funny how of the 5 questions, there's one that nobody's chosen. I thought it was the number one.
Yeah, that is surprising. I would have thought that would have been the one that everybody would have chosen, actually. By the way, Victor, I altered this to reflect your addition to it, and it's quite interesting.
There we go.
Okay. Well, shall we go ahead and close the poll? We'll give it just another few seconds. Okay, fantastic. So here are the results. 6% says my broker doesn't have enough time for me. 3% says I had a negative experience with another agent in my office. 6% said I want a more favorable commission. This came as a surprise to me because when you talk to most brokers, or at least people will say, well, the reason they left in some cases is they want a higher commission split. 22% said the company doesn't offer enough benefits. That's the reason. And 63% I'm not making enough money. Well, what the research showed from the Texas study was this. My broker doesn't have enough time for me. This is the #1 complaint that agents have when they leave a company. So it's not, if they're not making enough money, that's probably the symptom. But the source is they're feeling that the broker, if you've got a strong relationship with that agent, and by the way, just as an aside on recruiting and retention, the numbers show that when you change companies, you will go 3 to 6 months with no commissions generally, unless something very unusual happens. I know for most of the people I talk to, when they change companies, it's been about 6 months. Some do better than that. But on average, and I had this the one time that I jumped. It was, I was doing all this business. I changed companies. I went 6 months without doing a deal. So again, something to keep in mind that if you're trying to retain someone, just advise them if you make that change, are you prepared to go another 3 to 6 months with no additional business, because that's the average. So again, now in terms of my broker doesn't have enough time for me, a classic mistake that a lot of people make in terms of managing their offices is that they devote a lot of time to the bottom quartile. And where you need to be spending your time is your top 50% of your agents, because that's where you're going to get the most return for your time spent. And especially the 50 to 75th percent, it's like that second quartile, not your top people, but the people the next level down. Time put in there, that's your profitable middle. That's where you're going to get the best return. Now, here are the key findings from the broker owner manager study. First of all, in terms of office size here in Texas, 70% of the offices had 10 people or less. We had about 16% 11 to 25, so 86% had under 25. And then we had about 14% that had 25 or more. Now, the biggest source of frustration for the broker owners were agents who know nothing. And a number of the managers and brokers describe these people as shortcutters. They're the people, here in Texas, there's a loophole in the Texas Real Estate Commission requirements that allows the schools to associate with the community colleges and offer training either online or not face-to-face, where they can get, quote, their 45 hours in a weekend. Well, they're not really, they're just not doing the work. They can look up the answers pretty quickly in the back of the book, and then they're done. So there's an issue there. But these shortcut people are the ones that wash out of the business fairly quickly. What the research showed from the broker study is that an education mindset equals early success. So this is one of the things you want to be looking for. Does that person, are they interested in learning? The new agents who succeed in their first couple, 3 years in the business are those who continue to take classes, especially if they take sales training like we like to offer, or they go for their GRI, that they're people who have a learning mindset. Also, and we suspected this, but the surveys bore out this fact, that face-to-face pre-licensing training produces the best prepared agents. Because what happens in the face-to-face environment, generally the instructor is going to demand that that agent fills out a contract, that they understand, that they have to explain. There's some sort of written exam where they are monitored. They just can't look up the answer in the back of the book and not remember it. They actually drive home the point about what disclosures are, what agency is. So the face-to-face pre-licensing is more likely to give you a successful agent. It's something to look for when you're screening people that you may be considering hiring. Now, of course, one of the things you may be interested in is what are the best careers for finding recruits. as I mentioned before, teachers traditionally have been a very good source because they're people, and they're systems-based. They know how to show up at 9 o'clock every day, and they'll make their calls and do what they need to do as long as they know what to do. Now, one of the things that I was surprised at, and I've been working with Deb Waldman at the Texas Association, who is their professional education director, and she said that they were having a lot of people who were essentially housewives or house husbands signing up for training for new agent licensing courses. So this is another place that you may not be thinking about, but if you are running a licensing school with your brokerage or your association, you may want to think about offering classes maybe between 9:30 and 12:30, where people can get their kids off to school, and then if they're stay-at-home parents, they can do the training to get started in the business. In terms of the people most likely to succeed, the highest probability of success people came from one of two areas. People who had been in real estate-related fields such as mortgage or title, but the greatest high probability were people that had actual sales positions. It doesn't make a difference if they're selling cars, computers, copiers. If they had a traditional sales position, not something at the mall where they're working at the Gap, but something that is really, where they had to meet quotas, these people are the ones that are most likely to succeed in real estate. So if you're looking for places to recruit new agents, look in other sales-related industries. Now, in terms of the key predictors of new agent success, what the study showed is do the right thing mentality. That's mean putting what's right over what's in my pocketbook. Again, help them understand that real estate is a sales profession where you have to generate your own leads. Also, they're starting a business. Real estate's not a job where someone gives you a salary, unless you're one of the unusual business models, but it's something where they have to, they're responsible for their business plan. They're responsible for their bookkeeping. They're responsible for doing their taxes. That all falls on them. Also, and this came from the real estate simulator study, one of the key predictors of new agent success is emotional resilience. And this is a combination of optimism. It's the ability to pick yourself up when things go wrong and to keep on going. It's the ability, when someone says no, to say, well, gee, then, there's got to be a yes coming around the corner. I'm just that much closer to it. So this is highly predictive of sales success as well. Also, and this comes as no surprise to anyone on the webinar today, effective face-to-face skills. The research showed that many of the young people who rely exclusively on texting and social media for communication wash out of the business because they don't have face-to-face skills, because you've got to negotiate, you've got to be able to deal with confrontational situations, and if you can't, you're not suited for the business. And of course, the business is going paperless. They've got to be up to date on technology. So what I'd like to do right now is go through the 10 key questions to ask new recruits. These are part of the material that you can download that, again, I'll give you that URL when we get to the end of the webinar today. But the 10 key questions to ask new recruits are the following. First of all, do you have enough income to support yourself for 6 months with no commission income? And one of the biggest, probably the biggest reason that agents fail is that they are undercapitalized when they start their business. And they don't realize if I take a listing today, or if I get a buyer today, well, with the buyer, it's still going to probably take me 60 days to close if I have, if I sell them a house today. I've still got 60 days before I see my first commission check. With the seller, if I list today, it sells in 60 days, and it takes 60 days to close. My first listing commission check is a 4-month wait, and that's assuming that I listed something today. So one of the things we need to do to break the big lie is to tell people the truth about how much, how long it takes to feed the pipeline. They're not going to, most of them are not going to make a whole lot of money their first year. They need to be thinking about their first year as almost an apprenticeship where they're learning the business and they're getting paid along the way if they do some transactions. Number 2, do you plan to work full-time or part-time? This is, across the board, time and time again, the research shows most part-timers almost never do a deal. So if they can't commit to working full-time, and you may have quite a few part-timers in your office, if you can, encourage them to save enough money up where they can make a full-time commitment to the business, because if they're not working 40 hours per week, they're probably not going to succeed. I knew if I worked 35 hours per week, I didn't make any money. If I hit my 40, my business was fine. Number 3, now this gets at the DISC factors. These next 5 questions are actually a way to get at some of the DISC factors without paying the $150 or whatever they charge over there at Target Training for that assessment. But are you willing to door knock and cold call if that's what it takes to succeed? And what this tells you is whether or not that person is going to be someone who's going to be able to do kind of hardcore, prospecting, traditional prospecting, calling on expireds for sale by owners. If they're willing to do this, they've got a very high chance of succeeding. If not, it doesn't mean that they won't succeed. They'll just have to succeed differently. But this starts to be a red flag for you that they may not be the top producer profile. Now, the next one gets at the I factor. Are you comfortable striking up a conversation with strangers? And specifically, this is are they people? So if they answer yes to 3 and 4, you probably, in fact, if you get these first 4 questions answered yes, you've got a good you probably have a high probability successful agent sitting in front of you just based on those first 4. Now, question number 5, are you comfortable with an unpredictable environment where your schedule varies from day to day and where you may have to work evenings and weekends? This gets at the steadiness factor. Someone who scores high on the S factor on the DISC doesn't do well with a lot of variability. They want things to be predictable. And as all of us know, real estate's not predictable. One of the things I used to tell new agents, when deals go wrong, they never go wrong the same way twice. There's always a new twist to it, depending upon the personalities and the situation. Also, real estate for the most part is not a 9-to-5 job unless you're an assistant or a transaction coordinator. So are you prepared to do the long hours that sometimes are required to get your business up and going? Now, the next one, this is the one that gets at the issue of it doesn't get at the detailed piece, and you may want to ask if they have their checkbook is bounced down to the penny. That tells you that they are a detailed person. But are you a person who prefers to communicate with people face-to-face, not just by texting or through the social media? And as I mentioned earlier, if they are not comfortable being face-to-face, they probably are not going to succeed in the business. They can't hide behind their technology and succeed. It just doesn't work. Question number 7. Now, this gets at the utilitarian, so you want to pay attention to this one. Are you a bottom-line person who focuses on how a technology, strategy, or idea will help you get better results in your business? Now, again, what you're getting at here is if they've got that practicality, that utilitarian orientation, again, there's about a 71 or 72% chance that they will succeed because that one factor is highly predictive of sales success. And by the way, this is something, some of these questions are things that you could be asking your current agents just to see where they fall in this. I think you might find that there's a pretty high relationship between who your top producers are and how they answer these questions. By the way, on the first 9 questions, these are all based, the more yeses you get, the better qualified the person is. Number 8, this gets at the learning mindset. Do you enjoy learning as a way to improve yourself, including keeping up with technology changes? One of the things that came, one of the things I hear, I've done, as Victor mentioned, I've done a lot of speaking all over the country for many years and for a lot of major organizations, minor ones too. But one of the things that we've seen, I know someone will hire me and the owner of the company or the president or CEO will say, I don't get it, Bernice. All my top producers were here. They were sitting in the first 3 rows, and then the people who needed to be here weren't here. Well, one of the things we know about top producers is that they constantly are out there looking for how they can improve their business. They go to seminars, they learn, they listen to training, they read blogs. They are out there constantly developing themselves. So if you find someone who has that learning mindset, then that's someone who's, probably a good pick as well. Question number 9, are you actively involved with your community, place of worship, charity, or in other activities that help others? In 2007, Steve Cantor interviewed 100 agents who had sold $1 billion worth of real estate. The book was $1 Billion Agent Lessons Learned. And I went through and read the book, and I actually counted percentages. 70% of the people who were in that book were actively, and I mean very actively involved in their community in some sort of charity or other giving back to their community. They were passionate about it. It just wasn't just something to give lip service to. It was something that they loved doing, and they were integral parts of their community and giving back to others. So that is a predictor as well. And then, of course, the final question is, what are your income expectations for the first year in the business? You know, they give you these big numbers, kind of time to, again, explain. It takes a while to develop things in the pipeline, and the NAR numbers show that the longer you stay in the business, the more likely you are to succeed. Now let's take a look at the key findings for the new agent study. First of all, and this is really interesting in terms of recruiting, we know, first of all, under age 32, these are the people who are Gen Y, and there are more of them now than there are baby boomers, but you can still see the biggest portion of people coming into the business because real estate is a second career in many cases, or third or fourth career. Baby boomers, ages 48 to 66. I was fascinated that we had 4% of the people coming in business were 66 or older, over 66, which is surprising. But if you're looking for your high probability recruit, where you're looking for is at age 32 to 47, and the reason is, while the size of the boomer and the Gen Y generations are about the same, and I think there's like, I don't know, 33 million or something, there's only about 14 or 15 million Gen X's, but look at that they account for 40% of the total number of agents being recruited here in Texas. So this is a high probability target for you. It's this age group, maybe second, third career, but they are more likely to be recruited. You're more likely to have success here. In fact, if you're talking to a Gen X, double the probability of recruiting them as compared to some of the other age groups because there's fewer of them, but there are more of them coming into the business. Now, when we surveyed the new agents, we asked them, what are the 4 most necessary skills to succeed in real estate? And they said number 1 thing they thought was the ability to work with others. They thought professionalism, determination, and being a self-starter. Once they became licensed, and those of you who are doing training, any kind of training for new agents once they've come into business, the things they thought that were most important, contract to close, even though they may have gotten it in their original training, they still don't remember it, and they don't really master it until they start doing it. And again, contract basics, mortgage lending, which was kind of surprising, but again, when you think about the difficulty in the mortgage market, that's not surprising when given the current lending environment, and then listing essentials. So if you are doing any kind of in-office training, especially for new people, these are 4 areas where the agents here in Texas said that they needed the most help. Now, this next chart is really interesting because on the survey we asked, where did you find your first 3 deals? And 52.3%, this doesn't come as a surprise, came from their sphere of influence. What was surprising is 45.9% said broker or agent referral. Now, this doesn't, what we didn't pull out and was probably something we needed to do. Did it come from the broker's website? Did it come from an actual referral from the broker? Were you working as someone's assistant and they were sharing deals with you? Did you have a mentor who shared deals with you and that was given to through the brokerage? So we didn't have that data, but it's still a big chunk. Not surprising, 13.2% open house. Those numbers have typically been sphere of influence, number 1, open house number 2. But what we were not prepared for, and this came as a huge surprise to me, was that 10% of the agents said, and they had to write this in. This was not a survey response. They had to physically write this in. So that means they had to go to the extra effort. 10% of the agents said that they got one of their first 3 transactions from floor time or opportunity time. That's the answering no your phone time. So one of the things, if you have floor time or opportunity time in your office, train to it, because your new agents in particular will be getting their first deals. At least they've got 10% of them, and maybe a much higher. That may be part of what's going on with this 45.9% here. That may have come from the broker's signs out there that are generating floor-time leads. Now, in terms of the most used technology, I was surprised how many people actually have smartphones, 84.7%, and even a little bit more surprised at how many people had iPads. And these numbers are a tablet like an iPad. That these, for a new agent, if they can't afford at least a smartphone, then they are probably not financially capable of coming into the business. So you want to ask about, are they prepared? And if they're going to go paperless, they probably need to be on something like an iPad, or at least they have a laptop that they can go mobile with. Now, in terms of one of the things I'd like to invite you to do after today's webinar ends is to create your personal ideal recruit list, because one of the things I know from coaching and working with companies and owner brokers and agents is that in coaching we talk about you attract who you are, and you also attract who you intend to attract. So one of the best things you can do is to make your ideal recruit list. So who is that ideal recruit? And we've talked about, the 10 questions or some other things here on this chart. They have high energy, they handle rejection, that's the emotional resilience. They're good listeners, the self-starter. Ethical, honest, of course, is just the basic. Goal-oriented, lives and knows the area. What are the things that you're looking for in your ideal recruit? And I'd like to invite you to do that, because once you have outlined that and you know who that person is, it makes it easier to say no to the people who are not the right people. Now, in order to overcome the big lie now, kind of just to sum up what we just talked about, educate agents about the financial realities of the business, emphasize that real estate is a sales business that requires agents to generate their own leads and manage a business, and share the research that agents with an education mindset succeed more quickly and are more likely to be top producers. So encourage them to take sales training, encourage them to get their GRIs, or encourage them to do whatever training your company is offering, because those are the things that are correlated with success. Now, I'd like to invite you to preview our realestatecoach.com new agent training program. That is also directly below where you can download the Texas study results. So again, to see the results, the 10 questions, as well as to get a summary of, there's 5 different documents. One of them is the profile of a successful Texas realtor. You've got the study results, and by the way, I've cleared it with the Texas Association. You can take the Texas realtor off of there and just say, the profile of a successful realtor is something that you can use in your recruiting. And of course, please feel free to use those questions. Well, Victor, I'd like to turn it over to any questions that the audience may have at this point in time.
Yes, thank you very much, Bernice. That was awesome. I really
you.
appreciate it. At this point, we're going to stop the recording, and again, for the attendees on the call, there's a questions area that's in your GoToWebinar control panel. If you want to pull that up, you can feel free to type your question in there. We already have a number of great questions that people have asked about. So